Ever since the end of 2022 and coming into 2023, design trends have changed once again, and in particular, the neutral colors have changed. Gone are the cool grays and the blue undertones, and back in are the more warmer and more inviting tones. I've spoken about this before in some of my other trending videos, so you're more than welcome to have a look at those a little bit later. But today I'm going to be showing you some of my favorite warm neutrals for 2023. Now, first off, we're starting with a personal favorite of mine from Porter's Paint, which is called Rubble. Now, this one is probably one of the more neutral and cooler ones from my selection, but I think it's a really well balanced neutral. So if you're wanting something that is going to give you that neutral sort of effect, but not be heading towards a cream, I actually think this is a really, really nice color. In certain lightings, you could probably say that this almost looks a little bit like a grayish, because it does have that grayish sort of tone to it. It's not as yellow, but more of a greenish sort of undertone, and it is still really welcoming and inviting without it being too warm. The main thing that I like about this particular color is that I have actually recommended it both internally and externally. There are a couple variations of this particular color, going from half strength all the way up to triple, and all of these can actually be used in an outside circumstance as well. I love the versatility of this particular color, and honestly, the quality of Porter's paints, I will admit, quite nice. Totally not having a coffee at like 11 o'clock at night. If I start getting hyper, you know now why. Now, contrasting this one quite a bit and going much more on the warmer side is Farrow & Ball's Matchstick. This one is almost teetering onto that like classic cream sort of look, and it might be probably a step too far for most people, but if you're really struggling to add warmth into a space, this might be the color for you. This is more of a neutral where if you're looking for a white, it's going to be too much. It's going to be too dark. It's just going to be too much for you. But if you are wanting to have something on the wall where it does register as a neutral and does have a really warm yellow, almost orangish undertone, this is a really nice color. Personally, I don't see myself using it at all in my own space. I really do not like that classic cream look, but I also do not like this gray blue. So I'm somewhere personally in the middle. I'm more of a Rubble girl. But this is definitely a really nice color if you are struggling to actually reach that point of having a lot of warmth in a space. Honestly, you could almost potentially use this in a lot of traditional sort of homes, and I think it could be used in quite a few different spaces, but it needs to be a space that wants to be warm. My God. Okay, so what do you guys think of the hair? It's new, it's fresh, I'm loving it. I think it looks really cool. I just keep looking at myself. Give me a second. There we go. Now, I always love to shout out Hames. I know that they're a smaller brand here in Australia, and they're not usually a brand that you can get overseas because it is an Australian brand. However, I really like their color Refuge one. It's kind of similar to Rubble. However, it doesn't really have that grayish sort of tone to it. It's a little bit more of a cleaner neutral. I like this one because it does have that greeny undertone, and I personally really like any neutral color to have a green undertone. I personally find that the green undertone is much easier to work with in comparison to a purple undertone, as an example. And this color, I think, is a really nice balance of having more of that warm color come through, but without it being too overpowering. So if you're looking to add a little bit of warmth into your space and follow along with these upcoming design trends of those warmer neutrals, I think this one could almost get you across the line and still give you the same sort of aesthetic without it going all the way. I haven't had the pleasure just yet of working with many of Benjamin Moore's colors. However, there is a color that I do quite like of theirs that is in this neutral sort of aesthetic, which is called Athena. Now, this one is probably the coolest one that I'm recommending today, but I do still think it is on the warmer side of the neutrals, and I think it really would work alongside a lot of the 2023 what is my tongue doing? And still work along a lot of the 2023 design trends. A bit more of that like balanced sort of color where it's a little bit more on the bluier green sort of side, where it's a little bit grayer, but it still gives you that neutral aesthetic. This one in particular is definitely a neutral, but it isn't really gray just yet. So yep, if you're wanting almost gray but not quite, Athena is your girl. Yeah, Athena's a girl. Anyway, And lucky last, we have Natural Linen by Sherwin-Williams. This one is probably the one that I like the least, but that's just because I don't particularly like this type of undertone, but I've got to give you guys some diversity here. Like, I've got to try and help you out if this is something that you may potentially like. Now, this one has a bit more of an orangey reddish sort of undertone, which I personally find a little bit harder to work with when you're wanting to still stay relatively neutral. This one's probably the darkest and the warmest one that I've got on this list. And if you're wanting to go all in with a really warm scheme, this one, I reckon you could go right ahead with it and it'll be great. But if you do not want your home to look like the Sahara Desert, yeah, no, don't do this one. The good thing about this color is that it does have a little bit of a muted tone to it. So even though it is extremely warm, it isn't going to be super overpowering. So it's not like super duper bright. It still has that little bit of gray to it, so it doesn't overpower the space. In saying that, as I said, if you want the Sahara Desert, sure, go ahead. But personally, not for me. I much prefer a bit more of a cooler but warm neutral. Nah, that makes no sense. I mean, green is cooler, but like, for me, green is pretty warm. I'm getting off topic here. Honestly, I think this is probably a bit more of a love it or hate it sort of color, but if you do really like that warmer undertone, I reckon this one might be a winner just for you. I'm honestly really enjoying the fact that our color trends are starting to go towards a more warmer color palette over the last year or so. Personally, I was getting quite over with all of the grays that were happening for the last 5 or so years, and I'm really glad that we are starting to explore neutrals and even more brighter colors again in a bit more of a playful fashion, and thinking about how to make the space feel cozy rather than this sterile environment, because honestly, we are living in a nice, beautiful home. You want it to feel warm and inviting as well, and I honestly reckon some of these colors will definitely do that for you. Now, if you would like to learn a little bit more about color trends for this year, I will have a video at the very end of this that'll be talking just a little bit more about that. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I will see you next video. And if you haven't done it already, make sure you go ahead, like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.